Awesome, thanks Gladys. Hi folks, welcome to my presentation on top 10 auditing tips and tricks for Revit using Ideate Explorer. Again, my name is Eugene O'Day. I am the Building Design and Visualization Team Manager. Basically, I work on the consulting side of the business here on the dealer side, and I have a team that scatters the country in North America, up in Canada as well. Here's some of my Autodesk credentials. As you see, been around the block quite some time in the dealer channel. Over just hit my 30 years on the dealer channel here in this year, June. I've been using AutoCAD and Revit, as you can see down at the bottom, quite some time. So let's get into the actual agenda here. So I'm going to start off with addressing some of the important reasons of model health checks. We'll get into using Ideate Explorer, just kind of a picks and clicks to give you an idea of as I start zooming around in it, what I'm picking, what I'm clicking, if you will. A quick tour, and then we'll get right into the top 10 auditing tips. And then I'll have some Q&A time halfway through my top 10, and I'll have some Q&A time at the end to wrap it all up. So I'm going to go and turn my camera off just to save some speed here, and I'll turn it back on when we start up again. Well, that was on and off, wasn't it? All right, so why is it important to basically have a healthy model in Revit? Well, let's start off with, if you're looking at things that are performing slow, you got your model that is slow to open, slow closing, slow just working around, slow and saving. These are good trends to tell you that your model needs some health checks. Basically, you want to have your model streamlined. It's never fun, when you're dealing with models that are crashing, and that's a good reason for a health check. Something's going on there. Again, slow and saving, having saving issues, and of course, part of printing and exporting this, it's a time-consuming effort, and you don't really want that headache of having issues when you're dealing with those features. And then, one of the things that in my career I was on technical support, and I still do once in a while. I hit the support queue, but one of the things for upgrading versions and it crashes or you're having issues, typically it's going to be a warning issue. And it tends to be that you got to clean up your warnings, and clean up those warnings will fast track that to upgrade that model. And of course, how do we keep our project and company standards aligned when we're dealing with unhealthy models? And of course, the goal is to keep our project team and our stakeholders happy, right? That's our goal. And then when we're having issues with, excuse me, when we're having issues with our model, nobody's happy. So here's a very short list of some behaviors of why you will have some problems with a model. So I'm going to start off with, families. If you have families that aren't unvented, in other words, you just brought a family in from who knows where, and who knows what's going to happen with that family, you're going to be bringing in some additional line styles, possibly some subcategories. So it'd be best to really vet those families before you bring those in. And that would be the same thing when it comes to loading groups or binding of a Revit file. You're going to get all this other extra stuff that you may not know that you're going to be getting. And you want to make sure that before you do those things, that you vent those out and you make sure that those are healthy things coming into your project. Notice how that CAD file is kind of bolded out, and a couple other ones bolded out here, but think about bringing in a CAD file, whether you link it or import it. There's a lot of crazy things that happen graphically when you bring in those CAD files. And so those are things you want to be careful of, especially when you're bringing in a CAD file and you've imported it and then somebody's exploded it, and oh my goodness, what kind of stuff you're going to have for overhead on that. Hey, Gladys, we got some background noise. Can you mute the folks? Transfer project standards. You would think that bringing in transfer Thank you. All right, back on track. So transfer project standards can bring in extra stuff, and really what's happening is bringing in some of the dependency items for that. And a good example of that's going to be when we're looking at, let's say, schedules or bringing in views. And what's going to happen is, let's say we're bringing in a view, it's going to bring in that view title if it's not a standard view title. And now you got to figure out where to find it, how to get rid of it, and deal with that. And then of course, warnings. And especially when those warnings have to do with calculations or constraints. And these are things that we should be checking on often as well. And then this is kind of a wacky one. You might think of it as not such a big deal, but again, this is another support issue way back in the day that we had a series of it. I think in a week we had 5 to 10 calls at least once a day as somebody's Revit crashing because they had some software program that they downloaded, some app they downloaded for free, and it was causing havoc within that. And once we got that installed, the project was working good. So you want to be careful on some of these apps that you're bringing in. You want to vet them out to make sure they're not corrupting or doing things to your Revit model. And then last but not least on this one is a lack of BIM execution plans. If you have one of these in place, it's going to talk about your deliverables, the level of development that you're going to do, but also about how we're going to clean up the model and talk about all the different processes that we're going to use and put those in place. So a good BIM executable plan is going to help tremendously in the health of the model. As my friend Sash over at Ideate likes to say, remember that model health issues are typically a progressive, excuse me. So with that, let's get into Ideate Explorer. There we go. So Ideate Explorer, believe it or not, is one of my favorite tools that I use on a day-to-day basis when I'm doing production work or BIM management services. It's just something that allows me to navigate my entire project live or on demand. And so I can have it up and going as I'm working around doing my health checks or I'm looking at things. It's just an easy way of selecting and swapping out elements. And if I want to dig deeper into elements, like who created it, when was the last person that modified something, are they in place families, have they been pinned, are they in a model group, what model group are they in, and of course, warnings, be able to manage my warnings. So this is just a great BIM management type of tool to have when we're looking at model health checks. So looking at the tool in general here, you have this little auto hide feature. So what that really means to us is you can stay up in your Revit model and have it present all the time, or hit that little button and kind of collapse it down or hide it. But you can also just close it, and that would be the on-demand piece of it. Only you want to see it when I want to see it and just launch it when I need it, or have it up and have it live. Let you know what project you're in. So hopefully we're not using Revit with multiple projects open at one time, but sometimes we do, but lets you know which project we're dealing with. And kind of the meat and potatoes of this, what we're displaying down below. Are we displaying the active view, or are we displaying all the entire project, things we selected? What are we sorting by categories? We can also create filters and how we want to search that. And then we can say, I want to search this particular thing. And then we have a couple tabs here. So the Explorer piece of it is looking at the data information. Then we have Navigate, which allows us to look at the view information. And then we have warnings. Look at all the warnings we have in our project. And last but not least, we have, not last, but we have the query tool. So remember that, who drew this? Where are in-place families at? The query tool is that next level of digging deeper into the objects that you're looking for, the elements. And then down at the very bottom, lets you know what you picked. So how many things have I picked? All right, so with that, we're going to get into the top 10 that I feel are most important for us. So first and foremost, scanning develops. I made this comment earlier. We can look at the elements and report back to us either just by view or the entire project or things that we picked. And so think of this as kind of the blood pressure of the project. It's a good indicator of how healthy your project is just by looking at what things are in your project. So let's take a look at that. So I am in a work sharing project. And so over here, up on your ribbon, you got an Ideate software tab. And when you click on that, you're going to have your Ideate Explorer here, and then here's some other Ideate tools that we have available as well. I'm going to grab the Explorer button. It's going to bring it up for me. There we go. I'll make it a little smaller for right now. And you can see that, what project I'm in. I'm looking at the entire project. I can see my active view or things I select. I can sort by category. I can sort by level. You can see a list of things. And I can also use filters. We have some baked in filters like an Ideate Audit one that I'll be using. But we can look at annotations, let's say. So I click on annotations. I can look down here and I can say, well, what's going on with all the annotation type stuff? And I can nail down to that information. Or I come up here and I can just type in something I want to search. And it's going to narrow down to all the things that I'm seeing. And I can pop down, let's say here, down, and I want to get into that note there. And all I need to do is click it and double click it to open up that view. It pops right to that area for me. Or let's say that I want to go look at my model, pop over here to my model. Let's get rid of my little search. And I want to dig deeper into my curtain panels, go into my curtain panels. In fact, I'll just switch views to make it a little easier for us. And I'm going to pop over here to, let's see here, this operator panel. And I want to go to this one right here. And I'm going to click onto it, and it kind of shows me what's happening. But I want to get a deeper look into it. A couple things I can do. I can go off and say, let's do a selection box. Let's isolate the items and zoom in, zoom out. Think about these two right here. That button right there is that button there, and isolate is coming down here to the sunglasses, allowing me to isolate the items. So we bake those functionalities right into the product here. So I'm just going to go ahead and say I want to go do section box here. So I can narrow down, and you'll see me do this a lot today, that I can basically grab those items and look at them and get a deeper look into it. All right, number 9, model lines and detail lines. Man, so when you have an excessive lot of detail lines, it's a great indicator that somebody probably exploded a CAD file, or you're using a lot of Revit lines, and that should be really more like detail components. So you're going to see a lot of this happening typically in our details, as I said. Also model lines. So remember that model lines show up in all of our 3D views, so whether it's elevation sections, 3D floor plans, and we want to be cautious on how often we use those and when we use those. And so what we want to do is Ideate Explorer allows us to go off and look at that in a more detailed look and feel where these things are and what they are. All right, so I'm going to come over here to my filter, and I'm going to say, let's do the Ideate Audit. And then I'm going to come over here to my lines, and you see that I got close to 18,000 lines in my model. That's an indicator or something. And you can see that only 15 are model lines. So I got a lot going on here. So when I go ahead and expand that out, start looking at the different lines I have, they're looking okay right now. But as soon as I start going down, like, oh no, 0. That means I definitely got a CAD file in here that got exploded. And if I go down a little farther, I can start seeing some CAD layering structures as well. So I can definitely see what's happening here. Now, I can see it, but I can also do something with it. So if I grab all of these layer 0 line styles, I can come up here and I can say, well, let's go and make that over here to my cat exploded one. So I can basically just move those over if you wish. So remember, it's a dialog box that allows us to go off and still interact with Revit as we go. And so thinking about that, if I want to go down and look at these detail lines, look like a bunch of hidden ones. So I'm going to grab these hiddens right here, and I'm going to come up here and say, you know, let's move these over to the actual hidden Revit one, and quickly can start moving things around. And then once I get done with this, of course, I can start purging out those other line styles that came from CAD. Now moving over to the model lines. If I start opening that being said, I got room separation lines, okay, but then I've got these 3 right here. I'm gonna go and just grab one here. Remember, you can pick it and then just go and double click it to get into it. Now, I don't have a good view, so it's gonna let me go and pick a view for me. So you can see that there it is right there. So if I look at that, it's these 3. So I'm betting that I can grab those 3 or grab this top one here to get them all. And then those are probably supposed to be, now look at what's going on in my model, probably need to be detail lines, not model lines. So I can hit my little convert to detail lines, gives me a warning that it just did it. And so now they're detail lines versus model lines. So a quick look and feel for what's going on. Notice that over here in my Explorer that they've moved away. And then if I go back up to my details, you'll see it there. Next up, cleaning text and dimensions. So again, another way of looking at it is, you know, if you have some non-standard text styles or families in there, it's another symptom of a couple things, possibly that a CAD file got exploded, but also maybe somebody copied and pasted the text objects from a different project, and they have the same name but different parameter values within it. So where I was going to go and add that information to us. So Ideate Explorer allows us to go off and identify what those are and quickly fix them. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and change my category to my filter to annotation and pop down here to text notes and start opening that up. And so you can start seeing that I've got a bunch of, I got the main one, then 2 and 3. It looks like I brought in a couple times, same thing here. And I can go off and click it, and let's say I want to right click it and I say, just show me the elements. And let's go to a view for that. So you can see what's happening there. I'm going to do it again here for this one. Let's show me those. There we go. And I know that these are supposed to be the 32-second by itself. And so I'm going to go ahead and switch that over to there and quickly just updated all those for me. Now, if I go back and I want to look at this other one here, so if I go back and go back to my annotations here, and that one is one I want to look at. So let's go back to show that element. And I really want to dig a little bit, maybe a little deeper into it and sit down at my drafting table and kind of see what's going on here, get away from the computer. I can come up here and say, you know what? Let's go ahead and look at it a little bit deeper here. And you can see that it's telling me what the category is, what the family name is, the actual text itself, what workset it's on, and it's just so forth and so on. So if I go down here, we're just back over here, and we're looking for that plumbing one. So if I go down the list here, you can see there's the plumbing one right there. And again, I can export this out, and we'll go look at that a little bit later on. Next up, family auditing, man. So what I'm doing today is working in a project, but you can do this in your template. you can do this in your families and verify that your families are healthy. So remember we talked about earlier about, venting your families. This is a great way of venting your families, getting into that family and digging deep and seeing, hey, let's make sure that this is good before we actually bring it over into our model. Now, what I'm going to do, however, is I'm going to look at this more in the model aspect of, where are my in-place families? How hard is it to find in-place families? And so I'm going to take a quick look into how do we grab those and start looking at that, diving deeper into our selection set. So I'm going to go and close some stuff. All right. So thinking about this, if I pop over here to, let's say, categories, and let's pop down here to furniture. Starts with an F, Eugene. There we go. And I start digging deep into this. You can start seeing I got different types going on, but none of this is going to tell me that these are in-place families. So what I have is a nice little filter that I've created. It allows me to do some QA/QC on in-place families. Now, really what's happening here is if I come over here to my Manage tab and hit my selection button here, and let's go and edit this one so you can see what's going on. Basically what I did was think of the things that are most common that we would have in this particular project or my projects that would be in-place families. So I've got casework, I got some furniture systems, generic models, and there's this new category that we have in 2022 that allows me to do hardscapes. I'm gonna go and grab that one as well. I'll say okay, and okay. And so what I wanna do here is to say I wanna use that filter, and then it's gonna show me those things that are in-place families that are those categories. Now what you're not gonna see is hardscape, and that's simply because I don't have any hardscape in this particular model. And I also upgraded the model from 2021 to 2022, so I don't see that because I didn't have any. But how I want to use this is I want to get deeper and dive into where these are in-place families. So I'm going to go and say, let's go ahead and grab all of these. You can see that it grabbed them all, and I'm going to go ahead and hit my query button to dive deeper into everything. All right, let's make this a little bigger here. So look at all the stuff that we can do here. Just all of this stuff that we can get deeper into things. So just a whole lot of stuff going on here. But let's say that I want to find out if I have any pinned objects. And I want to say instance pinned. And I'll pop over here and tell me that I have actually no pinned objects. Well, what about, who was the last person that modified this? So if I go off and I say updated. And the last updated by. So you can see I've been around there a couple times here. A lot of Eugene's going on in our company. But you can see that 307 and so forth. Now let's say that I want to say that maybe let's see who's pinned objects and by update. So if I go up here and I say I want to say pinned again, what I can do is right down here, if I hold that control key down, I can do this up to 5. So I can look at 5 different things going on. So just hold my control key down, double click on that. And it's basically said no pinned for these guys. But now we'll see that who's been created in place families. So I'm gonna go and say place. And then here is in place. So I'll just double click on that with a control key. Comes up and says, okay, only one person has been created in place families. We need to look at see what's going on with that. And so I want to investigate what these in-place families are. So I can basically click onto it and then go ahead and hit select down at the bottom here. Ideate Explorer is going to show me all of those in-place families and select it. Now what I can do obviously is narrow these down. Always like to hit my little section box here. Since this is just a one-story building, I can start investigating this and start looking at what all these things are. A lot of these that you're seeing is like, maybe these really should be standard families, that piece of casework family for that. Why am I creating in-place families? And if I look at this right here, I've got an in-place family for a whiteboard, and it's a piece of casework, which is also wrong, and on Workset 1. So there's a lot of stuff going on for this particular one that I can start looking at and fixing. So this is a great tool, query tool to dive deeper into elements, not just using the Explorer just to see what things are, but now get deeper into who's been doing what and where and how. Auditing of views. Wow. So think about view references just in general. You know, where are these views, and do I have duplicates that I don't really need to have? Does somebody create something that's temporary that I need to get rid of and I don't want to see? Or, you know, how about what views aren't on a sheet? You know, there's great information that we can gather from this. Oop, you don't need to see that. There we go. So I'm going to start off with, let's see here. Let's go back to project, get rid of my note there. Probably actually want to go to my Explorer, my audit one. And then let's come down here to view reference. So you can see our different view references. I'll go to my callouts and start looking at the callouts. You can see that I've got an enlarged toilet plan, a couple of different toilet plans happening in there. So if I were just to go and view this one, I can start verifying that these are accurate. So there it is right there, it's using that. And if I go and click on this one here, and maybe, you know, tile my views afterwards if I'm not really seeing it well. So great way of looking into the model, making sure that our references are accurate. How about cameras? You know, we all know that this type of camera view right here is basically somebody threw a camera down just to look at something, but they didn't name it. So therefore, in our company, these are all things that are taking up bytes in my model that I can go ahead and I can delete. So I think I'm liking what I got there. So basically, I can hit the little delete button right there. It's going to come up to let me know that I'm deleting 11 of those. And then, of course, to double check what's going to happen is, oh, by the way, you're deleting views. And if those views are on a sheet, I might want to say, hey, wait a minute. But they're not. So I'm going to go ahead and say, OK. Remember that navigate tab I talked about? So allow me to navigate within my legends, my schedules, my sheets, my views. Well, let's look at views. And now I can see that I got views not on a sheet. So I can see these are all the different views that I have that aren't on a sheet. I can go ahead and do one of these and then say, you know what, let's go ahead and let's look at that and let's export that out. I'll go ahead and export that out. I already have one done, so I'm just going to go launch my Excel. And let's pull that up for you. You can see it. You can see all the data that was in that table came right across. And there's a lot of things obviously we can do with an Excel to investigate what's happening, what's going on. Well, we're at the halfway point. Gladys, do we have any questions?
We do. How would this help for electrical?
Well, anything that I'm doing here relates to anything MEP, structural, or MEP as well. So think about the things that you want to grab, you need to investigate, you need to look at when it comes to anything in your model that may be duplicates. I'm going to get in some more high-end ones for duplicating and stuff, but you know, that query one that I just showed you, that you can find out who's doing what. In-place families, people create those a lot in the MEP world. We want to investigate those for sure.
How does a filter for in-place families work?
How's the filter for in-place families work? Okay, let me back up here and do it again real quick. So basically, remember, I created a filter. So let me get rid of anything I got selected here. So remember, I created that filter. I select all of these. I pop over here to query. And if I just want in place families, I just type in place, grab where it says in place, double click it, pop it over here. So now it's showing me that I have 28 in place families. I click it, I hit select, and it populates my Explorer section. And now I can go off and do queries on any one of these things. So I just did one big group of it, but I can say, okay, let's not look at casework, which everything is casework, but I want to look at this particular one. I can double click onto it to get there. So same functionality, all we're doing is the query option allows me to query and update this Explorer tab to get more information. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one, and then we'll have some more time for Q&A at the end.
Perfect.
All right, so checking grids, levels, and reference planes. How often, and I want to say 2017 is the version that allowed us to create reference planes and actually create subcategories for those reference planes. So basically naming our reference planes and create subcategories for them. So how often are we naming our reference planes? And a good rule of thumb is we should be naming those planes because we have a ton of reference planes running around. We want to clean up that and get rid of those reference planes. So Ideate Explorer allows us to go find the named reference planes, but also allows us to find the unnamed reference planes as well. And how about looking at our levels, unwanted levels, or having things that are created on unwanted levels and moving those over to a proper level? Because last thing we want to do is delete a level and a whole bunch of stuff gets deleted too because they were placed on that level. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my views again. Here's my reference planes. So I start looking at my reference planes. We got weak references happen along the way. You can see that I got some named reference planes happening, and then all the way down at the bottom here, we got 32 that are unnamed. So a whole bunch of those going on. So again, in our best practices here for IMAGINiT and Ideate, we're going to go and say we don't want those. We're going to go and just delete those quickly. Now looking at levels, let's see here, I want to go ahead and sort my information by levels, and we'll say none for that. And so you can see that I've got, here's my different levels, and if I go look at, well, this one here and this one here doesn't seem right to me. So I'm going to right click it, and we'll say to show these. And zoom up onto them, and you can see that level 11 and level 10 are basically levels that don't have any views associated to them. And if I look over here in my Explorer, I can say that, well, what's going on with these? And it doesn't look like there's anything happening here on level 10. So I'm going to go and just delete that one out of my model. And that goes away. But then when I look at a level 11, it's got stuff going on there. So it's got walls associated to it. And I'm probably going to want to say, okay, let's go investigate these walls to see, hey, what's happening with those? And as I also look at this, I'm noticing that I've got a furniture level that's black as well. In other words, no reference planes, but I've got, 258 things going on, which looks like they're all furniture that's on a level that should really be on the first floor. So I can quickly grab all of that information, come over here to properties and switch it from the furniture level to my first floor level. Switches all that information there. And then of course I can go ahead and just grab that. Say none to that. And grab that level and now delete it because we shouldn't have that in our model. So you can see that as we're going through, just quickly ways of cleaning up the model, investigating and changing and swapping and cleaning. All right, number 4, groups. So, you know, these are things that we really need to stay on top of. And so as a BIM manager, you know, we should understand the risk and the rewards associated with our use of groups. And you know, if you don't know what a group is, really it's a selection set of objects, kind of, you would say, clustered together to create a single object. In CAD terms, it would be like a block, but just much more powerful than block. And they're typically going to be used in projects that are modular, like distribution of like cubicles or residential units or high-end hotels and condos. That's kind of the sweet spot for theirs. And there's definitely a best practice on the way of using groups and a really bad practice of it. And unfortunately, we find that a lot of folks are using the bad practice side of things, not naming them properly and not using them and managing them appropriately. So one of the first things we want to do is when we're doing this is checking to see how well are our groups happening in this. Looks like I got a section box happening there too. So just get back to a kind of a default one. And of course, I want to do my entire project, and I'm going to go back to our filter to the Ideate Audit and then groups. And this particular file, you know, good for us. We don't have any model groups happening here. We just have detail groups, and that causes some pains to me that we don't have. We have detail groups. So as I start looking at this, they're poorly named. As you can see, we have one that's just one instance. That's not good to have a group that's one. So we got a couple of them that are instances. So there's definitely a sweet spot for this, but let's go investigate some of these. So let's go look at, let's say, number 4 here. So definitely this is something that could be a detail component for sure. And if we go look at, let's say, number 11 here, say none. Another one. So looking at this, this should be basically just one of the detail component studs for that instead of a group for that. And then last but not least, this one right down here, group 6, 94 of those. Okay. So again, looks like this is just another detail component that looks like it just, you know, got placed. Now, if you don't know, this should really be repeating detail. And so if we look under our annotate tab and we look at components and we go to repeating detail, there's one right here. This really should just be a 2-pick type of repeating detail. And you can not have them not touch like this, these are touching, but you can actually have your set spacings for that. So if I look at this repeating detail and I go to my edit type button, it's bringing in a detail component that's got a distance of whatever I want it to be. And as I pick it, it's going to do that. So this would be a much lightweight type of functionality for what this scenario is trying to accomplish. All right, heading the top 3, and the top 3 are really important. So think about this. How often have you gotten to a model that's a work sharing file and people have drawn things on the wrong work set, and then you spend hours moving things around or trying to find those things? Now, Revit does have some nice functionality of, I think came in 2013 for colors and things of that nature, but it's really still pick and click to move those to the right work set. With Ideate Explorer, we can actually do this, see and do at the same time. So I actually have a view for that. It's kind of showing here, just this to kind of show what's happening. So remember, down here on our view display bar, we have work sharing display. And if I pop into it, you've got different ones. And if I say, let's look at work sets, and it's going to set up based upon the colors that we've set up. And if I zoom up a little closer here to these tables, you can see that we've got chairs one color and tables another color. And if I look at my display settings, you can see that, okay, furniture is supposed to be yellowish, and looks like we got work set one that is purple, and we need to fix that. Now, the old-fashioned way, obviously, is to grab the table, pop over here to properties, and switch that over to the proper work set. Okay. Now, if they're all the same type of element, that's great. But you know, if they're a bunch of furniture and stuff, that's a little bit harder to get to. Possibly some filters will happen for me. But I can just use my Ideate Explorer to do that, and I can go off here and say I want to sort by my work sets. And we'll say none for that. So you can start looking at it, and I can go, okay, let's look at my user work sets, and I've got these work sets, and I can say, okay, here's my exterior, and start looking at things that are on the exterior, like ceilings shouldn't be on the exterior. That's probably going to be an interior one. And I can start moving these things around as I go. So you can start looking at this and going, okay, back here to exterior. You can see I've got some furniture stuff happening there. Just probably need to get over here to the furniture work set. And maybe you have a team member that just doesn't understand work sets, and you give them a work set to draw, and then you come off and move those around. That's still a little bit tedious as well. But again, if I pop over here to my work set one, where there are a whole bunch of stuff, I can quickly grab all the things that I need to grab and switch those over to the proper work set. So just by doing that, all of our chairs and tables are to the right color, the right work set. Home stretch, number one. Well, kind of number one. And the reason why it's kind of number one is it's really 1 and 2, but I'm calling it 1A and 1B, if you will. And it really kind of depends on my mood, and it kind of depends on what I'm attacking. But CAD imports still are considered to probably be the one thing that causes performance decline in Revit. So we definitely want to manage those. So if we're dealing with just elements within the model, this is going to be a number one issue for us. And so again, did somebody bring in a CAD file? Did somebody explode a CAD file? Where are these things at? How about if somebody hit it, did a right-click hide element? How do you find that? Okay. It's very, very tough, almost impossible to find that just out of the box Revit. With Ideate Explorer, we can definitely find that information. All right. So I'm going to go sort by category again, go back to my audit. And there's my CAD import. So you can start seeing, got a bunch of CAD imports going on here. You can see that I've got a bunch of green drain DWGs. What's that? So I'm going to grab top one here. And let's say show it. And if I start clicking these, start watching, kind of wash over here for me. If I start clicking on these, you can start seeing the red start showing up, that my selected colors. And really what's happening is that if I look at this a little deeper in here and I click onto that, that is a DWG file. So really what this is it looks like it's maybe a dynamic block file or detail that brought in that was a dynamic block, and somebody just did a partial explode in Revit. So we still have some residual DWG files happening within there. So at least they didn't do a full explode, but nonetheless, we've got some details here that we've got to clean up and do something with. And this one right here is obviously suspect, chair.dwg. What would I have that? And it's really one instance. So where is that? As soon as I do that, it's going to come and say, you know what? This one's hidden. Would you like to open up in a hidden view? Yes, please. So it pops me over to the view, turns on a little light bulb button. So now I can actually see it and I can say, what's that? And that's something we don't need. So I'm gonna just go ahead and just delete that and start talking to my interior staff about what's going on with these imported CAD files. Why are we bringing that in when we should be using our Revit families? So very quick down and dirty on that one. And last but not least, project warnings. Warnings, 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 warnings. Ideate Explorer is a great way to look at your warnings and understand what it is and set some what we would call rankings on these as well. So maybe the ones down that we have at the very bottom of the list are not that important, but the ones that are at the top of the list are very important, like, oh, I don't know, identical instances in the same place. That's huge because that's going to screw up scheduling, right? So if this was chairs and tables and they're on top of themselves, I just doubled my counts. So, you know, this is a great way of looking for those, but also doing something about those. All right, so we hit the warning tab button right there, and let's make this box a little bigger so we can see it, see them all. And again, if we look at it, red is high, yellow's medium, green's low, and white's not ranked. And these are things that we can actually create ourselves. So we can save the setting, we can export it out, and we can import it into other files under our little sprocket button there, or we can actually change the rankings within here as well. But first off, I want to start looking at some of these things like overlapping walls. So I got 16 of those, and I start looking at that. I can click the set and say, let's go section box it. I can start looking at what's going on there. I can kind of see what's happening here, and I can actually make that change on the fly. So it looks like they're lapping over here, so I can pull that one up if I wished to. If I now move off to the next one, I can start seeing the same thing. So go look at this one. Looks like it's kind of the same deal. Oops. And so what I could do is pick that one. Maybe it needs to be attached to that one. And now I went from 16 to 15 because I just fixed that condition. So you can see that we can just do these on the fly. And I noticed this particular project team, they're having an issue with that. So instead of just leaving it yellow, I'm going to go and set this ranking to be high. And so next time I pop in the box, it'll be at that top of the list for me in the reds. And so that way I can keep a track on those and it doesn't get lost in my box. Now this next one here at the very top, identical instances, we got 64 of those. If I go look at those here. And let's go to this one here. There we go. A little bit easier to see. And then I can go and say, okay, what is it? What is it? That one, that one. It looks like they're identical. Now, the thing we want to do with all these 64 is typically we want to do some due diligence, right? We want to go through and make sure that, you know, we get rid of the ones we want. Now, how Revit deals with these is, you know, it deals by ID, so part ID. So if I look at the top one here, that's going to be the latest, not the latest, but the oldest one, the one that was created first before that one. So if I went through all of these and I've done my due diligence and maybe I went over here to query and got deeper into what I needed to do, I can go off and I can say, you know what, I'll just open these up here. If I click onto this one, I can see what I want retain all the originals, because what happened was somebody grabbed the walls and they did somehow copied them up on top of themselves. And so this is something we caught right away. And so instead of trying to undo all the way back 3 hours ago, it's easier to just go off and say, grab those originals and keep those and delete the other ones. There we have it. Got rid of all those. So now I'm down to 164 warnings, which is somewhat manageable. I definitely want to get rid of my highlighted walls for sure, but I've seen projects that have had thousands of warnings that people haven't taken care of. So definitely want to be looking at our warnings daily, weekly for sure, and make sure that we manage these appropriately. All right, with that said, just a little recap. Remember, scanning of elements, we did that pretty much throughout the entire project. This is a great way of finding out what we have in the model. Has somebody exploded something? Great way of digging deeper into it, looking at model lines and detail lines. It's a good indicator that we have some non-standard line types happening in there. Same thing with text styles and dimension styles or families. Same look and feel that we can verify that we've got maybe somebody again copy and pasted those into the project, same name but different look and feel. Remember, family auditing, we want to do that. We want to make sure that we vet out our families, and this is a great way of looking in and deepening into that particular family. Again, for the views, I'm going to go back with that reference plane one, that we can get rid of those non-named reference planes, and groups, making sure that we manage our groups appropriately. And of course, my top three, working with work sets and moving things to a proper work set, get rid of those imported details that we don't need, and managing our warnings. So before I open up the Q&A, I'm going to let you know that September 14th, I will be doing my next presentation on Ideate BIMlink, and what this presentation will be is kind of a look and feel into what BIMlink is, and then we're going to go run with how to do a health check with BIMlink, and that's going to be pretty much my standard for the next couple of series. We're doing a series of